Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining. We'll just give it a couple more minutes while everyone is dialing in. But thank you so much for being here. And thank you, Dennis and Matt, Morgan, and Miss Ruth for being here.
Thanks for having us.
Of course. Very exciting. Okay, we have folks dialing in. Um, give it a few more minutes. And just for housekeeping purposes, the chat is available for audience to drop in their questions ahead of time. Our speakers will try to answer them in between and at the end of the session. But thanks for being here. Okay, well, let's just get it started. I am Marvian Epstein, Senior Associate Director at the Global Supply Chain Institute at USC. Um, my colleague, Ms. Ruth, will be joining us to speak about the Global Supply Chain Conference and the certification. And my other colleague, Morgan, will be speaking about the Master of Science in Global Supply Chain Management program here at USC. Then we will pass it on to Dennis and Matt to continue the conversation on AI. Ms. Ruth, please.
Sorry, I was on mute. Good afternoon, everybody, and thank you so much for joining the webinar. I'll make this brief. I'd like to introduce to you that USC offers online certification courses in Lean Six Sigma, Green, and Black Belt. The courses are delivered online, both synchronous and asynchronous formats, and they're taught by USC faculty. So if you're interested in taking a course in Greenbelt, we have a class coming up April 25th, Black Belt June 25th. So please feel free to reach out so we can discuss in detail a personalized offer. And also, moving on to bigger and greater news, I'd like to invite you to the 14th Annual Global Supply Chain Excellence Summit, August 13th and 14th in Long Beach. Every year, this conference grows in attendance, content, premier speakers. The event will highlight more than just supply chain, logistics, and transportation. This is also highlighting finance, geopolitics, and trade policy, e-commerce, food and agriculture, AI, digital transformation, healthcare, humanitarian supply chains. For more information, please look at our website, uscsupplychain.com, and you can have more information. But as always, please feel free to reach out to us, and we will be happy to talk to you about the events. Thank you.
Thank you,
Morgan?
Ms. Ruth. Morgan?
Perfect. Well, hi, everyone. Good afternoon. And thank you to the Institute team for allowing me the opportunity to share a brief overview about our program today. So the MS in Global Supply Chain program is within the USC Marshall School. As what makes our program dynamic is as supply chain, as you know, supply chain is applicable across many industries. Whether your background is in finance, healthcare, HR, or any other fields, our program does provide students with a core supply chain principles that are essential across various industries. So in terms of looking at some of our program highlights, we offer both an online and residential format of our program, as the online program is designated for optimal candidates for this in the format of online, as this really allows for working professionals to work while earning their degree. While alternatively, we have our residential program, which is full-time, as students are required to be on campus. Both formats are structured and to be completed in 16 months, as the online program is a little bit more flexible, as students may connect with their designated advisor to explore what options might be a best fit for their schedule. As during their time in program, students do engage deeply with our curriculum, which has two key components, such as the global experiential trip, as this provides students with a rich hands-on experience learning for domestically and international, allowing them to really engage in real world supply chain operations, as well as our Lean Six Sigma Green Belt certification, which does allow for students for some of those hands-on working with real companies and applying process improvement tools to resolve real world issues. These are integrated into our curriculum and really do provide our students with a valuable global perspective that really allows them to be competitive in the job market. As addition to that, we do provide our students with support in career, as we do have our collaboration with the Randall R. Kendrick Institute that really does support our students with networking opportunities. Addition to that, we are very proud of our program rankings, as our program is highly recognized. As you can see, we were ranked number 2 for U.S. News and World Report and QS World University, and number 11 by Gartner. So in addition to just an overview of our structure, I would like to share a little bit more about our curriculum, as it is important that our curriculum is a reflection of the skills needed in today's supply chain field, as our curriculum is always being reviewed and has actually been recently updated to ensure that it's a reflection of the supply chain industry. You'll see that we do have some of our core requirements listed, as well as some electives, and you'll see that there is a difference between some of those 2 core requirements for our residential and online. But all in all, our program does consist of 30 units, with 7.5 of those being electives, as electives do provide our students with the opportunity to really choose as to where they have specific interests within industry. So if our program is of interest to you, we do encourage you to apply. We are approaching our round 3 deadline, which is going to be April 15th. But I just would like to note that for our online program, we will continue to accept applications beyond the round 3 on a rolling basis. So if you are interested in our online program, we do encourage you to still apply. And then, as always, if you have any questions or would like to learn more about our program, please feel free to reach out and contact us directly, or please connect with us and follow us on social media. So at this time, I would like to pass it over to Dennis, as he will be running today's seminar. Thank you all very much.
Thank you so much, Morgan. USC team, if you don't mind, could you just show the deck? Okay, great. Thank you. First of all, thank you, Marvi, and thank you for the team in the Institute for hosting me and also Matt today. It's an extreme honor. For those that I haven't had the pleasure of meeting, my name is Dennis Yao Yu. I'm the founder and CEO of The Other Group. We're a strategic advisory firm that works at the intersections of commerce, technology, and also AI. And so before we get into it, I just want to acknowledge the room for a second. I've been involved with the Institute and the Center for a while. This is a topic obviously very timely, really excited about. Margie was telling me, how many people have signed up, and the diversity of it, I think, is really exciting in a way that we have people from Disney, Blue Origin, Zeebeck, Northrop Grumman, and many, many more. Level perspective, we have people from, C levels to the VPs to supply chain leaders and PE partners. So this is really an impressive and also diverse group. And Matt and I are genuinely excited to be here with you today. My co-presenter is Matt Dornfeld, who will introduce himself in a moment. And together we'll be collaborating on AI enablement, helping organizations figure out not just what AI can do, but also practically how to start using it in a way that really creates real value. Go to the next slide, please. Thank you. So this is just sort of a housekeeping item. Before we jump in, 3 things you should know about today's session. First, this session is being recorded, so it'll be available on USC's YouTube channel. So if you need to step away or want to watch any part of the demo, you have access to the full recording afterwards. Second, we want your questions throughout. Marvi kind of mentioned this before. You don't have to wait till the end. Use the Q&A feature, and the USC team will be monitoring that in real time. They'll surface your questions to us as we go. If there's a moment during the demo where AI is processing, and as you guys know, there will be, that's the nature of sort of a live demo and also AI, we'll use that time to take questions, so keep them coming. Third, this is important because it sets the tone for today. This one, what we're doing is not a lecture. This is not a slide deck presentation. We talk at you for like an hour. It's a live session. So you're going to watch us actually build something with AI in real time on screen. Actually, more so, Matt will be doing that. And we're going to create something from scratch and how you and show you the entire process. And some of it will be messy. Some of it will probably surprise us as well, to be honest. But that's really the point, because that's what it's actually like to work with AI. It's more conversational rather than a script. Next slide, please. So let me quickly introduce us so you know who you're spending the next hour with. I'll do a quick intro myself. My name is Yao Yu. I've been in commerce technology for over 20 years. Before starting the other group, I spent time in Shopify, where I led the customer success team in a go-to-market organization. So I've seen firsthand how companies adopt new technologies, what works, what doesn't, and where things break down around time and transformation. And now I work with companies on AI strategy, go-to-market strategy, and increasingly on enablement and implementation. And I'm also an alum of the USC Marshall and currently on the board here at the Institute. So really honored to be back here. I'll pass it on to Matt to introduce himself.
Thanks, Dennis. Hey, y'all. So my name is Matt Dornfeld, based out of Austin, Texas. Last several years, I've been working for a company called Commerce, which owns a portfolio of e-commerce companies. And I've been in and around the e-commerce operations space for the better part of the last decade. In my most recent role, I was leading the AI go-to-market strategy for that business. That includes everything from internal business transformation and getting people excited about and learning how to use AI for their given role. And also helping the business at a larger scale understand data architecture, where to plug in which pieces, and then generate better outcomes based on the connectivity of systems and stacks and data sets that previously never actually talked to each other. Most recently, I joined a company called ClickUp, which is in the project management space. We believe in our building towards a converged workspace, which basically means we are centralizing where and how knowledge work gets done, and from via centralizing all of that information, you're actually able to generate levered outcomes with artificial intelligence because of the size and breadth of context that you're storing in one place. And I'll unpack more about what that means today. But at that company, I lead performance and productivity, which is kind of a new role focused on go-to-market product development. So really, my focus is on helping the business learn how to use AI in a variety of different ways, including operations, of course, but also across the sales and larger go-to-market org. So with that, on to the next slide.
So here's something we did before building today's session. We actually went through every single question that was submitted when you register. So thank you for doing that. And I want to be really honest with you about what we found, because it directly shaped what we're going to cover today and what we're not going to cover, so we can be a little bit more focused. So the question run an enormous spectrum, and that actually makes complete sense given who's in this room. On one end, we have people asking, how do I actually start using AI at work? Valid question. Maybe you play with ChatGPT a little bit, or Claude or Perplexity, but you haven't figured out how to make it part of your actual workflow day to day. On the other end, we have executives asking bigger organizational questions, such as, will AI replace my team? How do I think about this from a headcount and workforce perspective? And my honest answer to that is AI, this is a short answer, of course, but AI will not replace you, but the person who uses AI will outperform the person who doesn't. And so look at it from a perspective of AI as a productivity enhancer, not a replacement tool. And I think once you see the demo today, that will become even more clear. And in the middle, we have operation leaders asking, where do I get the biggest ROI? Or, which is the right question to ask? And a lot of people are asking those types of questions. And to be honest, we're still in the early innings. But in order to answer that question, it really requires understanding of your specific business, your data, your systems, and we can't answer that in a 1-hour webinar, but we can definitely show you the framework for how to figure that out yourself. Here's what I want to be upfront about, though. Matt and I are not supply chain experts. We're not going to stand here and sort of, pretend to solve your demand planning or procurement challenges in 45 minutes. that will be doing you a disservice, especially when some of you have spent your entire career in those domains. But what we are going to do is show you the tools and the thinking so that you can apply AI to whatever challenges you're facing, whether that's supply chain or marketing, finance, real estate field, or anything else. So the skill we're going to build today was for really a lot of diverse industries and also functions will be applicable. And for those deeper supply chain conversations, I know Marvi and the team and I have already started talking about doing a part 2. We'll specifically focus on supply chain AI application. And of course, the summit that Ruth just talked about in August, we'll be able to go much deeper in those areas with the right domain experts in person. Next slide, please. Okay, so given all that, AI is a massive topic. We could talk 10 hours and still not cover everything. And we're not going to try to boil the ocean today. Like I mentioned, we want to be a little bit more focused and really, having some valuable takeaway for you. Instead, we want you to think about AI adoption as a progression levels, almost like a video game. And so level 0 is where most people start. You open up Claude, ChatGPT, you ask a question, you get an answer, and that's useful. But the way you're using that is basically using AI like a smarter Google. One question, one answer, done. Level 1 is when you start getting really interesting. You point AI at your factual data, connected to your files, your CRMs, your spreadsheets. Instead of it just answering your question, it creates something real. It creates a deliverable, a working analysis. And then level 2, this is where it gets really powerful, is building a skill. Skill is a reusable AI capability. You build it once, and then you or anyone on your team can run it again and again. So that's where scale comes in. Think of it like building a custom tool that does a very specific job, except instead of hiring a developer, you build it through conversation with AI. And level 3 is the end game. So scaling those skills across your entire organization. Sales has got their toolkit, operations got their, finance has theirs, supply chain has theirs. Every team has like AI capabilities purpose-built for their specific workflows. But for today's sake, Matt's going to take you through both level 1 and level 2, live in real time. He's going to start by showing you what level 1 actually looks like in practice, taking a real data set, having AI analyze it, surface the patterns, and produce a finished output. Then he's going to show you that level 2, building a reusable skill that takes a company name and some basic context and generate a prioritized list of AI use cases. Where to start, what to focus on, or also what to avoid. We're going to run these against a couple companies. Actually, I'm not sure those people are on the call, but we certainly looked through the list of companies, and we thought that would be fun to bring something, real that you can resonate with. But before I pass it on to Matt, 2 things I want you to take away today, if nothing else. Remember these 2 very foundational things. The first is that AI is a thought partner and not a search engine. But a collaborator that you have a conversation with. So most people there's a lot of people I've spoken with regarding AI, and obviously everybody's at a different level, but there are a lot of people that are still using AI like Google. One question in, one question out. What we're going to show you today is what it looks like when you treat it as a team member who never sleeps, almost never forgets context, and then gets better the more you work with it. The second thing is AI is powerful. And when you have a hammer, everything starts to look like a nail. The biggest mistake I see across different companies is that people use AI for everything and anything, and they're all over the place, sort of throw it against every single problem without understanding what the biggest levers are. And so always start with the problem first, identify that single biggest challenge you're trying to solve, and then reverse engineer how AI fits in based on your resources, your data, your team's capabilities. AI doesn't just create value on its own. It creates value when it's pointed at the right problem. So pick the problem, and then everything else gets easier. All right, I think it's time for me to shut up. So I will pass it on to the main show, to Matt.
Well, thanks, Dennis. And then for the USC team, I'm going to take over the screen if y'all don't mind. Thank you. Okay, so I figured for today, as far as thinking through a deliverable before we get into skills, I wanted to demo something that would be relevant, hopefully to at least a good cohort here today, And I thought about my background in e-commerce operations and kind of landed on a use case around demand planning and inventory control. So what I've done today is built out a use case that we will go through live to Dennis's point together. And I'm going to walk you through some of the basic steps to get me to the point of being ready. To Dennis's point, AI is the first tool, I think, ever that if you don't know how to use it, you could actually ask it how to begin. You can't do that with a hammer, right? The same way. You can't ask the hammer what to hit. You can just start hitting stuff and see what happens. With artificial intelligence, you can actually have a thoughtful, natural language conversation that leads you down a journey to getting to whatever North Star outcome you're looking to achieve. And so to begin, what we're going to walk through today, like I said, is that we're going to pretend to be an inventory planner who's focused in the sales and ops space. And we're going to work for a made-up company called Pacific Coast Goods, and they're in the supplement space. And I figured we're going to go prepare for our monthly review with our leadership team. So that's everything from demand forecasts to inventory planning, supplier scorecards, open POs, you name it. And just to walk you through briefly, here is the data set I will be referencing. So standard spreadsheet, sure, like everything we've seen before many times. So this goes across demand forecasting, the inventory snapshot of when I prepared this data set, a supplier scorecard based on how our suppliers globally have performed, and then the open purchase orders related to this demo today. So standard stuff, right? I'm going to switch screens again real quick. Okay, so hopefully some of you are familiar with Claude. If not, Claude is an LLM or basically an agentic interface owned by a model owned by Anthropic. And so it's quickly become one of my favorite tools. I will frequently text Dennis at obscene hours just to check in and make sure he's actually gone to bed because it is a very, very addictive tool because it is so highly performant that the experience itself becomes part of the fun, and the outcomes are kind of the dessert and cherry on top. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take that data set and I'm going to upload it to the chat. You'll notice I'm just starting the standard chat interface here. And then what I'm also going to do is drop in a prompt. And so a prompt is just the starter message. I'm sure many of you have done this before. So I'm just adding in basically who I am, who I work for, what I'm trying to do, and what the task is, right? So in this case, I'm asking for a review of the data set, and then I'm looking for identification of the risks that I would need to bring to my meeting ranked by the business impact. So basically, what would my bosses care about? So I'm actually going to upgrade the model here to the most expensive one because we deserve it, and we'll hit go. And so what's going to happen here is that Claude is going to read the file. It's going to pull on the relevant skill, which in this case is actually an Excel skill, which means it has the ability to read the spreadsheet document. And then it's going to continue to work through commands, as you can see here, to analyze the data nested within the document, which is, again, all the data we just walked through now. And then within seconds, I'm going to get a very, very detailed response around what the top risks are as I requested. So having been around demand planners before, I know that this exercise is not easy and usually encompasses a lot of tabs, conversations, different worksheets. And as you can see, this goes into quite granular detail. Some of the beauty of taking a spreadsheet with a lot of data in it is that when you apply an agentic layer on top of it, you can begin to, again, use natural language to explain what's happening. I've often found that to be a challenge in my world as well, where I'm looking at all the right things, but actually putting it into words that I can translate from deep technical experience into, again, natural language, something that anyone could understand, especially at an executive level, is very important. And so that's what's happening here. So clearly, Claude's done a really quick job of helping me understand, okay, what's going on? What are those risks? So I might want to go a step further and say, all right, where would I want to take this conversation from here? So in this case, I'm going to drill into a very particular SKU, and given the demand, I want to understand what my options are, given all the macro conditions I'm having to navigate. From there, Claude will also model it out so I can, again, present this to my executive team. So again, it's going to run the same version of the story here, right? Where it's going through a series of commands. It's going to pull on the skill to read the spreadsheet, understand what's going on.
And just a reminder, this is the part of what I was saying. The AI is going to run its course. So during this time, if you guys have any questions, please feel free to put it in the chat, and then we can also answer them.
I haven't yet stumped the AI, but I haven't found ways to incentivize speed yet. So we're wrestling with the two of those.
Yeah. One day we're going to get to the point where it's just the output's going to come out in like 2 seconds. So
all it will cost is additional tokens.
Yeah, right. But you're also running a pretty deep analysis at the skill level, so it does take a little bit more time.
Mm-hmm. So I will note, so model selection, which I think is a very windy topic and not something we need to go too deep into, but you can optimize for speed by selecting different models. And so, whether you're using ChatGPT or any other solution, you can select a different model type. However, accuracy, attention to tone, all sorts of different things around proximity to becoming more human-like are impacted by which model you choose and when you deploy it. So in this case, again, we've chosen the most powerful model, which means we're going to get a really excellent output, but the trade-off there might be speed in this case. So as you can see, what this has done is modeled out, per my request, the risk analysis for the SKU that I had flagged. And so what I can do is I can actually download these documents or these images and then roll that into a larger presentation, which we'll touch on in a bit. But the point here is that I've got everything I need from a visual perspective, and I've got the natural language breakdown beneath. And so again, if you're a demand planner and you're a small team, you're very agile, you're moving quickly, this is a really quick way to take the analysis that lives in one place and then go really deep on a particular SKU and even surface up your options for your leadership team based, again, on the macro conditions that you're entering into the model. So if I took this and went, again, a step further, I could ask for 3 talking points that I can then elevate in this next meeting. And so now I can start to build out, again, the framework for how I'm going to present this information to my leadership team, and then go a step further. And I can anticipate what kinds of questions that I might have to also be prepared for off the back of whatever I present. And so again, if you're reporting up into an executive team, we don't always know where those meetings are going to go. And I do think it is valuable to keep something like this open on your screen in those conversations. But in lieu of that, if you're wanting to go in preparation, this could be whether you're doing something for an interview, so much as even doing this just for your day-to-day. The point here is that you can go deeper and deeper around preparation and having full 360 coverage of the work that you're doing and the different ways that data can be interpreted, which all would be valuable in a room with an executive team. So here we'll just enter in, again, pressing on it a step further.
Hey, Matt, can you answer some of the questions that's related to your presentation?
Yes.
I'm just going to read them to you real quick. So I think one student or one is asking for a question, but from Wu Yangshin, thank you for the presentation. Do you use this prompt for your real work, or are they just only for today? That's one question. Second question is, have you and your team compared responses from the different AI platforms for similarities or discrepancies? If we think AI as advisor tool, then the different platforms will be multiple advisors. And lastly, for ChatGPT, ChatGPT, they convert XLSX file into CSV to read it. Do Claude does the same, or are they able to read the formula within the XLSX file? Those are the 3 questions.
Actually, Matt, to save you some work, because I was reading the first question, so I can help you answer the first one,
Sure.
the last one that Marvy mentioned, and then the last two, I think, pertaining to how you're operating right now. So the question was, for ChatGPT to convert the Excel spreadsheet into the CSV to read it, does Claude do the same? So great question. The ChatGPT typically converts Excel into CSV, which means it flattens the data. And I'm going to go a little bit more deeper so you can understand it. And you lose formula formatting and some of the sheet structure sometimes. But Claude handles it differently. And we don't work for Anthropic, but obviously Matt and I are a big fan of Claude. Claude can actually read the actual Excel file natively, including the formulas, the multiple sheets, and the structure of the workbook. So if you have a spreadsheet with calculated fields, pivot references, or cross-sheet formula, Claude can actually see all that context, and it doesn't strip it down to just the raw values. So it's a meaningful difference what you're doing, whether it's like reporting or analysis. So yeah, hopefully that answers that one.
Cool. Thanks, Dennis. So I think just looking at the other two here, yes, as far as the prompt, so this is a very particular exercise, although I think between Dennis and I, we both used very similar adjacent prompts to address these kinds of challenges. In fact, I would even call these lightweight. The difference between something we would do on a call like today versus something you might do in your day-to-day is that you might install or make available considerably more context than just a spreadsheet. And I'll show you what that means in a couple of minutes. But the idea is that your questions, one, can always be better. And if you don't know how to ask your question, again, you could talk to Claude about that. And so part of the exercise here, it's almost like looking into a mirror and having that back and forth with yourself. It's a very meta experience, right? Where you're asking the machine to help you ask better questions of the machine. And so by getting into that rhythm, you can actually start to use Claude to ask deeper and more thoughtful questions over time. And so while these are suggested, very much aligned to real world examples. As far as the different models, that is an excellent question. And part of it depends on the kinds of work you're doing, to what depth, what's made available to your business. The list goes on, use case. So as an example, Google has an excellent suite for creative solutions. If you want to create a video or an image or what have you, they've really done an excellent job building tools like Notebook LM that help users build podcasts off of YouTube videos and spreadsheets, and you can do all sorts of cool things that we probably need another call to cover. By comparison, ChatGPT and Claude or OpenAI and Anthropic are constantly competing against each other for who has the better model, the next set of features, who makes it easier to use. And the only winner, the real winner here is everyone on the call. Because at the end of the day, as long as you work with a model or a partner, right? Let's say Claude in this case, you're going to benefit from two things. One, the constant innovation that the Anthropic team will continue to invest in this platform. And two, Anthropic constantly having to deal with competition from everybody else, which will, like a flywheel, kind of push the further reinvestment. If you followed in the news, I think Claude and the Anthropic team, they're now up to a $30 billion run rate, which is up from just $1 billion, I think within just, was it less than 9 months ago, maybe less than that. And so what we're seeing is considerable growth and exponential investment in product. So different models, different use cases. Yes, there might be some discrepancies, but Claude, just in this example, is widely accepted as a very powerful model for data analysis. And there are certain plugins and connectors, which I can quickly walk you through, that actually enable direct connectivity to Sheets and PowerPoint slides, for that matter, that would further enable that functionality. Touching on Andrew's question on security. So that is kind of the holy grail of questions here, as far as like, how much can I trust this thing? To what extent? What guardrails need to exist? When I've worked on data transformation or AI transformation within my previous role and now my current, there are a lot of things we have to consider at all times. One, who gets access to the platform and for what use cases? Two, how are we tracking usage? How do we prevent or at least monitor around shadow IT instances? We're thinking through what is this tool connected to? And have we considered the data relationship between our data, this platform, and whatever third-party platform we hook into it from there. And I don't think any one company has the perfect answer. That said, I do think enterprises are really in a good position to make thoughtful bets around exposing more and more data sets slowly and through lots of testing. So the way we've done it historically is, you start with one platform and then you start to migrate into more use cases before you eventually introduce new tooling as well. One instance of like a real life challenge is contact data, right? User data or client data. The challenge with the data is that small businesses are very commonly sourcing information from around the internet, and they don't necessarily care when they receive that information or how. However, if Dennis decides, he doesn't want his name in Matt's database, he can make a request to delete that data. But if I don't, one, as the business, if I don't, one, listen to that request, or two, I don't know how to action it, I'm either going to get sued or I'm going to have to just fully delete Dennis's data, even if he's only looking to remove his last name. And so data lineage and really understanding when data is introduced, how it's stored, who has access to it, those have been problems for a long time, but now they're on hyperspeed because we've introduced a model that operates at that velocity. And so, as far as the right way to handle it, I think every business is going to have to make that decision for themselves. But what I can say from a lot of companies I've been around, they are definitely taking thoughtful bets and slowly pushing the line on these things, just while limiting, whatever risk exposure they truly can. Okay.
Matt, I know we have a couple more questions, but maybe we'll save that for later because I know you have a few demos. So
for sure,
just want to be cognizant of the time.
Yep. Rosa, we'll come back to your comment there.
Yeah.
Okay. Last one here. So again, this is more use case focused, which is just, hey, this is the situation based on all the data we've made available to you. What kind of next step would you recommend? And so back to the earlier comments around thought partner exercises, this is what people are talking about. This is what if we haven't given all the relevant context to Claude, we should do that. And there are a number of ways we can do that through files or even voice files that we record and upload. But the more context you provide it, just like a human, the better decision-making the machine will be in a position to do. So Claude is in a much better position to make a recommendation given the full data set we've exposed today. You can see here it's working, doing a deep analysis across everything we've provided it, including all the previous conversations. And then in a moment, it should tell us about our gummies.
I think your screen is paused.
You are very correct. Sorry about that. Fortunately, you didn't miss any of the good stuff. You just saw it was just thinking. But I think the point here is very similar to the above, where we will get a diagram as this loads, and then these are all downloadable, and then it will explain its work once this analysis completes.
Well, I think we're just going to be agile here. Oh, there you go. I was about to answer that question, but go ahead.
Its ears were burning. So what you can see here is, again, we've got the two charts and then a really deep analysis along with a recommended phase plan. My one word of caution is that please do not just copy paste what you see here and send it to your boss. That is like a huge no-no, I think, in any role at any time. As tempting as it is to be like, this looks legit, there's always the case, and it even says it right here at the bottom, Claude is AI and can make mistakes, please double check. Granted, that is the fine print. It's literally smaller than everything else on the screen, but it's a huge point because whatever we put our names on in the world is totally our work. And I've seen this across a lot of different roles where things just get pasted and ultimately you do have to walk back certain things. I've even seen that with customers. So I just highly recommend actually spending the time to go through it. But if you think about how work used to get done, we've now removed the 80%, right? And we've done the hard work around the fine points of getting data to talk to each other or map to an answer has now been greatly simplified. What remains is the deep need for true understanding of the problem and expertise on what to do about those problems. So as far as like risk of job removal or skill erosion, whatever, we're now in a place where experts in demand planning are going to have their moment in the sun, because you're now in a place where the hard part around getting the math to function will be removed from the equation, or considerably so. And now we're relying on true expertise on what drives the best outcome for the business based on the information we have available to us. And that's where I want my best people spending their time, not on the construction of the data set, but actually the execution off of the back of it. Good to move on. Any final notes here, should we address the open question?
I think in a way you kind of answered the question, but I'm happy to just expand on that a little bit too. Sure. But my sort of short answer is no, you should never blindly just trust the AI output. And I say that as someone who uses this like every single day. And here's how I think about validation. So first, always verify the facts. If Claude's giving you a number or statistic or claim, spot check it. AI can still hallucinate. It's gotten a lot better, but certainly still can, meaning that it generates something that sounds right but isn't. And the more specific and more consequential the data, the more you need to verify. That's where that human in the loop still comes in. The second is give it a better context upfront. This is the sort of, just call it art the prompt as well. The reason AI gives bad answers, usually it got bad. It was just more so vague in terms of input and the prompt, what you're asking it to do. So if you feed your actual data, your spreadsheet, your report, your database, instead of asking it to guess, the output quality goes way up, right? That's why Matt's kind of showing connecting to real data sources, like good data in, good data out. You guys probably all heard of it, garbage in, garbage out. Third, kind of treat it like at this point, I mean, it's probably better, honestly, but treat it like a junior analyst. It's not an oracle. So you wouldn't take a first-year analyst work and send it to the CEO without reviewing it. That's more so from a sort of this discernment and also reviewing and verification process and also lens. So same with AI. I think a lot of companies or people that, Matt kind of mentioned as well, having received some of the outputs that you kind of see that really skip the step of validation, those ones really just lose the trust from a client, from partners, or from the customers really, really easily. So just a few points when it comes to, you should always verify and also validate.
Cool. So with that, let's pivot into skills, which is one of my favorite areas. So I'm just going to hop into the settings here. So skills, for those of you that have watched my favorite movie, The Matrix, will make a lot of sense. For those of you that haven't watched The Matrix, please do that tonight. Highly recommend. But outside of that, so The Matrix has this scene where Neo, the main character, is in a chair, and he's got basically a machine that's plugged into his brain. And there's another person who's at a big computer, and they're programming in certain combat skills and trainings and other things into this character's brain. And suddenly the character wakes up, Neo wakes up, and the leader of the group, this guy named Morpheus, comes over and asks him to prove his skills. So Neo says he can fight Kung Fu now, and this other guy asks him to show him his Kung Fu skills. So they go into this digital dojo and they start fighting. And so while they're fighting, Neo suddenly realizes, without having the physical history in his mind of knowing how to do something, but he inherently understands how to fight Kung Fu. And the brilliance of it is that as the scene goes on, he's getting better and better and faster, and he's becoming more performant. Skills in Claude operate very similarly. And so Dennis talked about this earlier, where skills are basically a set of instructions that are one, live ongoing in the back end of Claude, and two, can actually be appended to and grow and evolve over time. And what that means is, as you come to Claude and you ask certain questions, you're going to have certain expectations of certain things that need to happen. So as an example, in the demand planning demo we just did, it would have been nice for Claude to have a demand planning background. Like if I was going to hire a junior analyst, maybe I'd expect them to have exposure to how a retail company fulfills its gummies from international vendors. That kind of experience is really hard to acquire in a new hire, but it's much easier to type. So in Claude, what you can do, and what I've done, is I've kind of taken a meta step here where I gave Claude a skill to help me create more skills. So when I go to Claude to describe something I intend to do more often, like write a blog, let's say, in that example, I'm going to have specifics and expectations around what my blogs look like, sound like, how long they are, what kinds of personality it has. Is it funny? Is it direct? Whatever. Those kinds of set things I'm going to want to exist every time. And I also don't want to have to ask Claude to be a certain way. I want Claude to understand natively when to engage these skills based off of my requests. So there's a lot of words here to basically say, I've given Claude a path to understanding what I'm expecting of it on an ongoing basis. And the beauty of it, as you could probably guess, I didn't write this. Claude wrote this. So I went to Claude and said, I'd like to build a skill that helps me build new skills with you. And so then it built a prompt for me to give it to build a skill to then create new skills that I then use in the future. Good luck using grammar to figure that sentence out. But I think the point here is that we've created this thing that's living and breathing. And now I've used it to create new skills that I can reference whenever I need. So here, for the purposes of today, we've created an AI use case prioritizer skill, which is what should I work on and how should I think about the sequence in which I should work on these things based in reference to impact and overall effort, along with a report that I can give my bosses. So what we're going to do is call upon this skill and see how it goes. If it works, I will take full credit. If it doesn't, this was all Dennis's idea, and we can follow up with him after. So, okay, let's come in here and say, I'd like to build.
Well, Matt, as you're kind of typing this out, for those that may not be as familiar with Claude, could you just explain the difference between chat, co-work, and also code?
For sure. Yeah. So chat is the most simple version of Claude, which is it's effectively the out of the box chat experience that exists with Claude. So if you have one use case and you have one thing that you want to get done at a time, chat is a very easy on-ramp to using more and more agentic capabilities. So you come in here just like you would ChatGPT or any other solution, and you go through the motions of having a conversation to achieve a singular outcome. Co-work takes that same use case, but expands it broadly to multiple users or agents that are doing work simultaneously or in parallel. So, let's say you're going to write a blog. You might have one agent going to do research about a topic, another agent that's writing the post, another agent that's thinking about the social media post that goes with the blog you just wrote, and then maybe another agent that's actually managing all of those agents to ensure it's done on a certain timeline or in a certain format to ensure connectivity across all stages. And so it's definitely you effectively spend more tokens, right? Because you're spawning more agents and more work's getting done faster. But you can imagine if you're on a time crunch or you're doing a lot of multi-step activities, moving away from the single shooter, which would be chat, to the multi-channel play, which is co-work, would be a major productivity enhancer. Code is the holy grail. So if co-work is like bowling with bumper rails, code has no bumpers, anything. Like you're relying on your skill to bowl here, and what happens is up to you. So code is more of the natural language engagement channel to actually build products or services or business plans or what have you, all using, again, natural language translated into code that can be deployed and actually hosted. So, if you wanted to build a product, you could actually do all of that from chat in the code instance and then host that on some, other websites like GitHub or otherwise that actually host that code and then deploy it elsewhere so that other users like us on the phone can actually engage with. Anything else you want to add there, Dennis?
No, you hit it out of the park. That's right.
Oh, all right. So let's just say, let's do sales, just for simplicity's sake, we'll say sales and marketing. Let's say our biggest pain points are, we'll keep them in this order. We'll say that. So you can see, again, kind of went down its own path. It made some assumptions that because it knows who I am, that it wants to keep on that path with my company. I actually don't want to do that. I'm going to focus on Zebek Realty. You can see Claude is going through the process of asking me clarifying questions. I would love if all of our junior analysts did that. Probably save some of us some stress. But the idea here is that, again, it sought clarity so that way it could give me a better outcome. And so if my input was not as clear, which in this case it was not, it course corrected to give me that opportunity to set it on the appropriate path. And then this is where all the hard work's really going to kick off. But Dennis, did you want to tackle open questions while we let this go?
Sure. Yeah, let's do that. Let it work. So the question in the chat is, I've also been trying to use AI more actively in my work, especially for data analysis. But one area I consistently struggle with is validation. As the data size grows, the number of points that need to be checked also increases. If I validate too deeply, it becomes inefficient. But I don't validate enough, I don't feel confident using the results. In practice, how do you determine the appropriate scope and depth of validation? Do you have any personal guidelines or approaches? Great question, honest question. I think at a high level, a lot of people will deal with the same thing because, and you'll probably find out, the more you use AI, the more time you're going to put into some of the work that you do, right? Because it produces results really quickly, but it may be imperfect, but you need to verify, you need to iterate, and so on. So quick thing to answer your question, I think where the line between validating enough to trust it, validating so much that you're defeated the purpose of using AI in the first place is the way I think about it is this. I use a tier approach. So not everything needs the same level of scrutiny. So for example, for directional work, brainstorming, summarization, first pass analysis, I validate lightly. So I scan the output, I check it, if it passes the smell test, and then move on. If something feels off, I dig in. But I'm not line checking every single data point because the cost of being slightly wrong is low. So it's always, the cost and the risk, the reward and the risk. For anything that goes to a client in a report or informs a financial decision, I validate the critical sort of 20%. Not every single row, but I spot check the outliers as well, the biggest numbers, and then the conclusions, right? So if AI tells me revenue grew 40%, for example, I'm gonna go back to the source to confirm that number and how that number sort of came about. But I'm not checking every cell in a 10,000 row spreadsheet. Like I'm checking the ones that matter the most. So you need to know what that is, and that's once again the human in the loop part of it. Practically though, this is also, once again, the reframe of, using AI that's very differentiated than using Google is that you can ask AI to validate itself. And that's what we do all the time. We ask it to say, now audit your own work like a 30-year, professional analyst. Flag anything you are less than 90% confident about. It will tell you what's uncertain. So you can use AI to check their own work. So that narrows your validation scope immediately, right? Instead of checking everything, you're only checking the spots that AI itself flagged as risky. So I think that mindset shift is pretty powerful, very much in line with, for example, how Matt built the skill using, AI to build the skills. Hopefully that answered the question, Usam.
Cool. So, so our work is done, right? We've got the case study we were hoping to see. So on the left, you've got more of a verbal, right, summary, which is just here are the top use cases. You could probably cut and paste some of this and then riff on it as you see fit. But you'll notice it also offered me another option, which is for me to open it in my browser. And so what I'm going to do
Matt,
is
your screen is paused again.
I'm so not good at that. So here, what I've got here, again, is the 3 use cases and then the roadmap, all of which can be cut and pasted. Or at the bottom here, I can use a browser function to actually visualize what you're seeing on the right here. So on the right, I've got a preview of the HTML format of this data. But if I swap out of this real quick, I can actually look at a full web page, which can be sent. Like I could email this file, this HTML file, to Dennis, and he can access this on his computer as well. And as I click into certain things like a strategic bet, I will get a score, an overview, and a timeline of how and when I should think about these priorities. And I can do that across any of my use cases as called out in the report. So here, you can see the impact's clearly going down because these aren't related to the quick wins or the strategic bets that maybe I should be taking. But all this data lives and is stored within the HTML, which means, again, anyone on the executive team, Dennis here, could go in, click whichever piece of content he would like to visualize, and then move that on and forward that on as he sees fit. Beyond that, I think the point around validating the data is super critical. I'm in a similar place where I'm basically scanning to ensure that things are directionally aligned to what I'm really looking for. And if I see one challenge or one bug, I know that there's probably likely more. The thing that I've also started to do, though, is create some validation steps directly within additional skills. So if you can describe your challenge, your concern, and some of the things you know to look for more regularly, you can actually structure it so that the skills are firing off at the same time in such a way that we're using one skill to build this AI prioritization framework, but a second skill to validate the data based off of your preferences and things you know you historically look for. Again, not to say that this will be perfect, but it begins to chop away at the risk that's associated with such a large data set or narrative file, so that we get to a place where you can feel a lot more confident sharing this on with other members of your team. So I think that's it. I think that's, we got one more question from John.
We actually have
Yeah,
a
we
few
got a
questions.
couple more questions.
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
I can read it off for you, Matt. Let me see. Andrew's question first. Traditional apps are static, features fixed, and can adapt dynamically to end user needs. AI agents can be directed through a simple prompt. Do you see a future where applications are built that cater to an end user's / company's needs, and it evolves with the business processes?
Absolutely. We're seeing a lot of agentic use cases applied to the application layer. And I've even heard of stories with friends of mine that have kids where they're personalizing video games and doing things that are much more attuned to the individual's interests. And I think there's probably going to be a large shift into how software or things like games get deployed and ultimately consumed. I think what's interesting, if you think about software, in general, we've all been using the same UI despite how different our use cases are, which is pretty wild, right? Dennis's needs are much different than mine, yet we use the same interface and we've made that work. That foundational understanding is about to start deteriorating pretty quickly, but I think it will be a bit of there's a curve to it, right? I don't know if it's all going to happen overnight necessarily, but the risk with building too much too fast is that you've created too many versions of things that can actually be maintained and used. And so companies like Lovable, right, that allow for really quick deployments of cool prototypes have a huge surge in usage because you're creating things really fast. They also have a large churn problem because they're not seeing people actually see those projects into the next stage of becoming a real product or a company. And so I think it's a little early to know exactly how that'll play out, but I'm expecting a lot of change over the coming months.
We do have a couple more questions. I know we're almost at time. So what we can do for Manuel and also John, I already wrote down those questions. We can send an email out for a little bit more comprehensive answers to your questions, if you don't mind. And USC team, if you don't mind, just kind of bring up the last slide so we can cap off and making sure that we end on time. I know there's quite a bit of busy people here too.
Sounds good. Rosa will share the slides. Thanks, Dennis. Thanks, Matt. This is a wonderful session.
No problem.
Of course.
Well, thank you guys. Next slide, please. Yeah. So, just everything we talked about, if today anything resonates with you and you want to take the next step, as well as just ask any questions, please reach out to me or Matt. Here's our contact information. We do these AI enablements. We can run workshops, training sessions to get your team productive with the AI tools. Think of it as like what we just did today, but customize it for your organization or your team or your challenges. The skill creation, obviously something that Matt just kind of built. We can build that across the workflows and the teams and organization. And implementation, that's a huge one, where a lot of organizations don't have the internal resources or the know-how on the engineering front. We work with the network and integration partners who can deploy that at the enterprise scales. And we will work across all major platforms. Today, we showed you Anthropic's Claude, but we're very adept when it comes to OpenAI stuff, Gemini, Microsoft Copilot, whatever fits your organization ecosystem. With that being said, thank you all for coming. Thank you all for just being engaged with all the questions. This is, I love doing this, especially for USC Marshall. Fight on and, Trojan family.
Yeah, thank you so much. And if you guys want to learn more outside of AI, so please come to the summit August 13 and 14 in Long Beach. That is our 14th annual Global Supply Chain Summit, where we will dive into more information on AI, technology, and supply chain. So hope to see you there. And thanks again, Matt. And thanks again, Dennis. So we'll see you hopefully soon.